I woke up to the sound of my daughter's voice, and I wished to God I hadn't. She was telling the doctor to stop trying. My own daughter. And she said it the way you'd tell a waiter to take back a cold plate of food. My name is Walter Kessler. I'm 63 years old, and up until 11 months ago, I would have told you I had a good life, a good family, and nothing to fear from either one. I was wrong on every count, and that mistake nearly buried me twice. I live outside Asheville, North Carolina, in a stretch of hill country called Reems Creek, in a stone and cedar house I built myself, plank by plank, over 3 summers back in the 90s. I started a commercial roofing company, Kessler and Sons Roofing, out of the bed of a used Ford pickup in 1988. By the time the accident happened, we had 63 employees, contracts with half the shopping centers and school districts in Buncombe County, and a name that meant something to every contractor from Hendersonville to Johnson City, Kessler and Sons. Funny thing about that name, I only had one son, my wife, Diane, 59, and I had been married 34 years. My son, Bradley, 31, was supposed to inherit the business. He had a title, Regional Operations Director, though what that mostly meant was he showed up late, left early, and let our foreman, a good man named Russell Combs, do the actual thinking. My daughter, Kayla, 27, taught 3rd grade in Weaverville and called me Dad in a voice that had gotten thinner and more distant every year since she'd married a man named Trent, who I never once saw lift a finger for anybody but himself. And then there was Marcus, 33. Marcus wasn't my blood. Diane had him before I met her, from a man who left before Marcus turned 2. When Diane and I got married, I was 29 and she was 25 with a 4-year-old boy holding her hand at the courthouse steps, and something in me just decided, right then, that boy was mine. I coached his little league team. I taught him to drive a stick shift in the church parking lot. I walked him down the aisle at his own wedding because his mother asked me to, and I didn't hesitate for 1/2 of 1 second. We never did the adoption paperwork. His biological father was still breathing somewhere in Tennessee, and the lawyers said it complicated things, but on every form that mattered to me, in every conversation I ever had, Marcus was my son. I made him general manager of the company in 2019. I trusted him with the books, the bank accounts, the keys to everything. I'll come back to him. I need you to remember how much I trusted him. It was a Thursday night in September when my life split into a before and an after. I'd been at a job site out past Marshall, a school re-roofing job that had gone sideways because of a supplier delay, and I didn't leave until almost 10. Diane texted me, "Leftovers in the microwave. Don't forget." I remember that text because it was the last ordinary thing that happened to me. I remember the on-ramp to 19/23. I remember a truck's headlights suddenly too close, too fast, coming from the wrong lane. And then I don't remember anything at all. A load-bearing shift, they called it later. A lumber truck had lost its brakes on the grade and drifted across the center line. It hit my driver's side doing near 60. The EMTs told my wife I shouldn't have survived that impact. They said a lot of things that week. I wasn't awake to hear most of them. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here with me, hit that like button before we go any further, and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight, because trust me, you're going to want to be sitting down for this one. Here's something nobody tells you about a deep coma. It isn't like sleeping. It's like being buried alive in your own skin. You hear everything, the machines, the footsteps, the particular squeak of a hospital door, but you cannot make a single muscle answer you. You're just a set of ears in a body that used to be a man. Mission Hospital, Asheville, 4th floor, ICU. I know the floor, because I heard an aide say it to another aide, twice, like she was reminding herself. The first voices I recognized, on what I later learned was day 4, were a doctor's, low and careful, and Diane's. Calm in a way that struck me as strange, even then, half-conscious as I was. His vitals are steady, the doctor said. But we're seeing very little neurological response. If that doesn't change in the next several days, we'll need to have a serious conversation about goals of care. What does that mean, exactly? Diane asked, not upset. Curious, almost. Like she was asking about a warranty. It means we'd discuss whether continued aggressive treatment, ventilation, resuscitation, if his heart stops, is something the family wants to pursue, given his prognosis. A pause. Then my wife of 34 years said, in a voice as level as a kitchen counter, "He always told me he never wanted to be kept alive artificially. If it comes to that, I want the DNR signed. I don't want him suffering." I felt something in my chest fold in on itself like a lawn chair. I never said that. Not once. Not to her. Not to anyone. I have told Diane many things across 3 decades of marriage. I have never once told her I wanted to die quietly and conveniently at 63 years old. "He'll understand," Bradley said. He was there too. I recognized the particular lazy scrape of his boots on the tile, a sound I'd been hearing my whole life and never once liked. Dad's not the type to want to be a vegetable. He always said family should be practical about this stuff. I never said that either. My own son, rehearsing a lie at my bedside, like he'd practiced it in the parking lot. "He's 63, Diane," Bradley went on. "He built the company. He got to live his life. Nobody wants to say it, but there's no shame in letting a man go with dignity." I heard the click of a pen. I heard paper. I heard my wife of 34 years sign a do not resuscitate order at my bedside on the 4th day I was fighting for my life, and I could not even make my little finger twitch in protest. "Do not move," I told myself. "Do not react. Whatever you do, do not let them know you can hear this." That single thought is probably the only reason I am alive to tell you about it tonight. They came back that evening, all 3 of them, plus Marcus. I heard the door, the scrape of chairs, the crack of a soda can. Bradley, obviously, because it was always Bradley. "He looks the same," Kayla said. "Flat, not sad, inconvenienced." "Doctor says it could still be another week," Diane told her. "Another week," Kayla actually sighed. "Mom, I have report cards due. I can't keep driving out here." "Your father is in the ICU." I wanted to scream. "And you're worried about report cards." But of course I said nothing, because I could say nothing. "Nobody's asking you to move in," Bradley said, in that tone he always used when he wanted credit for being reasonable. "He was never at a single one of my school things," Kayla snapped. "Every Christmas program, every parent-teacher night, always a job site, always a client. Now I'm supposed to rearrange my whole life for this." She wasn't entirely wrong. I had missed things. I had worked too many nights building something I thought was for them. But I heard something else underneath her words that had nothing to do with grief, and everything to do with math. Marcus spoke then, steady, careful, the same tone he used running our Monday operations meetings. "He made it clear to your mother he didn't want to be a burden. I think we honor that." "Exactly," Bradley said, and then, quieter, like he thought I couldn't hear the volume change. "Once probate clears, the family trust starts distributing. I saw the folder in his office last spring. I know roughly what my share looks like." Bradley. "Diane? Sharp. I'm just saying. Not here. Once probate clears." My own son had gone through my private files and penciled my death onto a spreadsheet while I was lying 4 feet away, still breathing, still a man, and not yet a number on a distribution schedule. I don't have words for what that does to you. I won't pretend I do. Over the following days I heard things I will carry to my actual grave. I heard Bradley on his phone in the hallway, thinking I was too far gone to register anything. "Yeah, he's not coming back from this. Listen, can you get me a number on that lakefront lot out on Beaver Lake? I'll have capital soon. Capital." His father was lying 6 feet away and he called it capital. I heard Kayla tell her mother the house on Reams Creek was too much land for one widow to manage, that Diane should think about listing it after. Like I was a weather system passing through. And I heard Marcus quiet. Efficient Marcus, the boy I taught to drive, the man I made general manager, the man I'd once wired $18,000 to when his truck broke down and he was too proud to ask directly. I heard him tell Diane, "The sooner the estate settles, the cleaner this all is for the business. I know where everything lives. I can manage the transition. I know where everything lives." Something cold dropped into my stomach and simply never left. On the 8th day, I opened my eyes. The nurse actually shouted a good kind of shout, and within minutes there were doctors, questions, lights. "What year is it? Who's the president?" Squeeze my hand. I answered every single one correctly. And when Diane walked through that door 20 minutes later, her face did something I've turned over in my mind every night since. There was relief on it. I want to be fair to her. There was real relief. But underneath the relief, for just a fraction of a second, something else moved across her expression like a shadow passing over water. Then it was gone, and she was crying, and she was saying, I was so scared, and I held her, and told her I loved her, and that I was lucky to have her, and every word out of my mouth was a lie. And for the first time in 34 years of marriage, I didn't feel 1 ounce of guilt about it. They sent me home 2 days later. Bradley held the car door. Kayla had stocked my refrigerator, which, in 27 years of her life, I could count on one hand the number of times she'd done unprompted. Marcus stood in the doorway of my own house and said, We've got the business handled, Walter. Don't even think about work. Walter, not Dad. He hadn't called me Dad since he was maybe 19, and I'd never once let myself notice that until right then. Thank you, son, I said anyway. The word tasted like a rusted nail going down. I sat in my recliner. I ate the soup Diane made. I played the single greatest role of my life. A tired, grateful, slightly foggy 63-year-old man, grateful just to be home. I was none of those men. For 2 weeks I told them I still had headaches, still got dizzy, still wasn't sharp enough to go back to the office. Diane believed it instantly, which told me plenty about how closely she'd actually been paying attention to me these last several years. Bradley nodded with real sympathy and went right back to whatever Bradley did all day, which appeared to mostly involve golf and other people's labor. Marcus told me to take all the time I needed, that he had the office covered. I'm sure you do, I told him. He had no idea what I meant. My first call was to a lawyer not Hal Ferguson, who'd drafted our wills and handled our closings for 2 decades, and who I suddenly remembered Diane had been having lunch with more often than made sense. I needed somebody clean, somebody new. A friend from my old church pointed me toward a woman named Renee Castillo, mid-50s, a small office off Merriman Avenue with no fancy waiting room because she didn't need one. She had a handshake like a closing argument. I need to know if my family has been stealing from me, I told her, and I need you to start from the assumption that the answer is yes. She didn't blink. Then let's find out. The second call went to a private investigator, a retired sheriff's detective named Owen Pratt who worked out of a strip mall office in Weaverville and drove the most forgettable gray sedan I have ever seen. I told him everything, the hospital, the lakefront lot, Marcus's. I know where everything lives. Diane's voice signing away my life like a grocery list. Owen wrote it all down without a flicker of expression, then looked up and asked, How long married? 34 years. He just nodded slowly and wrote something else down. That 3rd week is where it turned ugly. Renee called me on a Tuesday morning while Diane was at her Pilates class. Walter, she said, you need to come in, and you need to be sitting when you see this. I drove myself for the first time since the wreck. Same road, same on-ramp, hands steady on the wheel in a way that surprised me. Renee had a folder on her desk, the thickness of a phone book. Your general manager, she said, has been pulling money out of Kessler & Sons for roughly 4 years. The number was $610,000. Inflated supplier invoices, a ghost subcontractor account, wire transfers routed through a shell company called Highland Slate Partners LLC, registered in Delaware. Completely invisible, unless a person knew exactly where to look. He's your stepson, Renee said. Yes. There's an internal message thread we recovered. His stated reasoning was that he was, quote, securing his position in case the will didn't include him, since he's not blood. I sat with that a long, long time. I had paid off that man's truck when he was 22. I had made him general manager over employees with twice his tenure. I had walked him down the aisle. I told him, more than once, to his face, you're my son, Marcus, you never have to secure anything. And he robbed me anyway, quietly, for 4 years, while calling me Walter. There's more, Renee said. Of course there was. Diane co-signed 11 of these transfers. She has authority on the business accounts. A number of these transactions could not have gone through without her signature. My wife hadn't just stood at a hospital bed and told a doctor to let me die. She had been actively signing off on her son robbing the company I'd built with my own 2 hands out of the bed of a truck. The lakefront lot, I said. Tell me about the lot. 2 months before the accident, with Diane's direct help, Marcus had prepared a forged power of attorney bearing her real signature and a forged version of mine. The moment it looked like I might not wake up, he'd moved fast, filed a fraudulent quitclaim deed at the county register of deeds, putting his name as co-owner on both the Reams Creek property and our main equipment yard off Riverside Drive. He'd been ready, Renee said, waiting for the right window. Our handwriting analyst has already confirmed the power of attorney is a forgery, it's airtight. I can file to freeze both properties and strip his name from the deeds entirely. She paused. But the moment we file, he's served. He'll know we're onto him. Then we don't file yet. When? I thought about the 35th anniversary dinner Diane had already started planning. Everyone in one room, smiling at me across a table. After the party, I said, let him walk into that night thinking he owns half my land. Owen Pratt called 2 days after that. I was on my back porch, watching the creek do nothing in particular when my phone buzzed. You want to hear about the affair, he said. Not a question. Tell me. Name's Dale Farrow, 41. Runs a private gym over on Weaverville Highway. Your wife's been seeing him for going on 16 months. 16 months. I did the math without meaning to. 16 months ago, Diane and I had gone to our neighbor's New Year's party, and she'd worn the navy dress, and we'd danced badly to a song neither of us knew the words to, and at midnight she'd kissed me and said, this is going to be a good year for us. 2 weeks later, she'd signed up for personal training sessions. I set the phone on the armrest and stared at the water until my hands stopped shaking. 34 years. Not 34 bad years, either real ones, hard ones, good ones. I hadn't been a perfect husband. I'd worked too much, missed too much. But I had shown up for that woman in every way I knew how. I had built the entire life. She was now quietly redistributing to her children and her personal trainer. If I broke now, I told myself, they don't just get my money. They get to watch me break. Keep moving, Walter. There was one more piece. I reached out to a bookkeeper named Priya Shah, 46, sharp as a table saw, who'd worked our accounts for 9 years before Bradley, in one of his rare exercises of actual authority, had her demoted over what he called a personality conflict, which really meant she'd caught something, and he didn't like being corrected. We met at a coffee shop downtown on Lexington Avenue. She was there 5 minutes early with a black coffee already in front of her, looking at me like a woman who'd been waiting a long while to have this exact conversation. I flagged those vendor invoices 2 years ago, she said before I'd even sat down. Bradley told me I was overstepping, but it wasn't Bradley running it. It was Marcus. And your daughter. I stopped, coffee cup halfway to my mouth. Kayla? Marcus was routing cash through Highland Slate, Priya said, sliding a small flash drive across the table. But look at the secondary payments. Monthly checks, direct deposit, straight into an account tied to Kayla's classroom supply fundraiser business, the one she runs on the side. It's not a coincidence. She found out what her mother and Marcus were doing over a year ago. Instead of telling you, she asked for a cut to keep quiet. She's been financing half her life off your stolen revenue. Priya became my inside source for the next 10 days. She had backup records nobody else knew existed, because that's the kind of thorough woman she is. Together, we rebuilt the entire fraud timeline with surgical precision, every date, every amount, every signature, cross-referenced and airtight. $610,000. 4 years. 51 separate transactions. All while I was out at job sites past dark, thinking I was building something for my family. I was. I just didn't know I was building it for them to strip for parts. By the end of the 4th week, here is what I had assembled. Diane. Affair with Dale Farrow. 16 months and counting. Co-signed on Marcus's fraud. 11 separate transfers. Helped forge the power of attorney. Told a doctor to let her husband of 34 years die. Marcus. $610,000 stolen over 4 years. Forged deed on 2 properties. Told the same doctor he didn't want to be a burden. Bradley, no knowledge of the fraud or the affair, but sat in my ICU room discussing lakefront real estate and capital while I lay unconscious 3 feet away, and told the doctor his father wouldn't want to be kept alive. Kayla knew about the theft for over a year, said nothing, took a monthly kickback to stay silent, and lied to a doctor's face about her father's wishes. Renee had the property lawsuit drafted and sitting in a locked drawer, ready to file the Monday after the party. Marcus had no idea. As far as he knew, he co-owned my land and my equipment yard, and I was home eating soup and half watching baseball. Let him keep believing that. He had 6 days left to enjoy it. I emptied our joint savings account just under $900,000. Diane assumed I never checked and moved every cent into a new individual account at a bank 2 counties over. Completely legal. My signature, my distributions, my money from the very start. I also had a new will drafted. The old one was generous. The new one was, let's say, instructive. I want you to understand something about me. I am not a vengeful man by nature. I've spent 35 years running crews and reading blueprints. I like problems solved cleanly, in order, with the least amount of mess possible. What I was building wasn't revenge in the movie sense. It wasn't rage. It was a job, and I had one more job left to finish. Our 35th wedding anniversary was 6 days out. Diane mentioned it cheerfully over dinner one night, while I smiled across the table at the woman who'd co-signed away $600,000 of my company's money. We should really do something special, she said. Absolutely, I told her. Let's invite everybody. Make it a real celebration. Let's dance. Ape. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. Every one of them was going to be under the same roof, and every one of them was going to get precisely what they'd earned. If you've stuck with me this far, drop a comment and let me know where are you listening from tonight, neighbor. Hit that like button before we keep going, because we are just getting to the part you came here for. Nobody throws a 35th anniversary party for a man they're actively counting down to bury, but that is exactly what my family did. Diane planned the whole evening herself, 20 neighbors from around the cove. Our pastor from Grace Fellowship out on Weaverville Road, catering from a place downtown, rented string lights, a banner that read 35 years the Kessler family that I found rolled up on the kitchen counter 3 days early and stared at for a solid 10 seconds. The Kessler family. Sure, let's celebrate that. The party fell on a Saturday evening in late October. The kind of mountain night where the air finally turns crisp around 7 and you can stand outside without a jacket for the first time in months. Our backyard on Reams Creek was strung with lights, the creek behind the house catching every reflection and turning it into something that almost looked peaceful, almost. Bradley arrived first, dressed like he was headed to a resort, which was Bradley's factory setting. He clapped me on the shoulder. Looking good, Dad. You really bounced back. Best I've felt in years, honestly, I said. He had no idea how true that was. Kayla came in behind him, hugged her mother, handed me a card. I opened it right there on the porch. Inside. Dad, so glad you're still with us. Love you. I looked at her handwriting a moment and thought about a little girl who used to fall asleep in the truck on the ride home from soccer practice. Thank you, sweetheart, I said. Marcus arrived last. Because Marcus always arrived last, he thought it made him look important. Blazer, firm handshake with both hands. The kind he used when he was performing warmth instead of feeling it. 35 years, Walter. That's really something. It really is, I said. I've got a little something for everybody tonight. A gift. He laughed like it was a joke. It was not a joke. By 8 o'clock the yard was full, glasses clinking, neighbors laughing, Diane moving through the crowd in a green dress, looking like a woman with absolutely no secrets whatsoever. Bradley was on his second bourbon. Kayla was talking to somebody near the water. Marcus was working the crowd. Actually networking. At my own anniversary party. Because that is exactly who he was. Renee Castillo was parked out on the street in her car with a folder on the passenger seat. Owen Pratt had made one phone call that afternoon on my behalf. 2 Buncombe County Sheriff's deputies in plain clothes were sitting 2 driveways down. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. I walked to the center of the patio, picked up a fork, and tapped my glass. The yard went quiet. Diane looked over and gave me that warm public smile she wore like a piece of jewelry. Bradley raised his glass. Kayla turned around. Marcus crossed his arms and watched, still smiling, still certain. 35 years, I began. That's a long stretch of road. You build things together. You sacrifice for each other. You make choices every single day, trusting they're worth something. A few neighbors nodded. Somebody murmured agreement. Nearly dying has a strange way of clarifying a man's thinking, I went on. When I was lying in that ICU bed at Mission Hospital, I didn't have much to do except listen and remember. Diane tilted her head, just slightly. The smile held, but something behind her eyes shifted. There it is, I thought. She just felt the temperature drop. I heard things in that room I will never be able to unhear. And tonight, on our 35th anniversary, in front of everybody who's watched us build this life, I want to share what I learned. I reached down to the table beside me. 4 envelopes, each one with a name written across the front in my own handwriting. The yard had gone completely silent. Bradley stepped forward first, bourbon still in hand, wearing the loose smile of a man expecting a bonus check. I handed him his envelope. He opened it, read it, and I watched the smile drain out of his face slowly, the way water leaves a tub. Inside was a printed transcript, every word he'd said in that ICU room, the lakefront lot, the word capital, the line about probate clearing. Beneath it, a letter from Kessler and Sons HR, dated that Friday, effective immediately, terminated, company truck lease canceled at midnight. And in case you're wondering about the future, I told him, the new will leaves you exactly $1,000. Consider it, seed capital. Dad, I'm not. Kayla was next. She walked over slowly, arms already folded, and took her envelope like it might bite her. Same transcript. Her portion highlighted, he was never at a single one of my things, and beneath it, a printed still from the hospital's hallway security camera, time-stamped the exact minute she'd told the doctor her father was suffering and should be let go. She looked at the photograph, then at me. Dad, I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said, steady. And you knew about the money. You knew, and you took your cut, and you said nothing. Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. You're off the lease you co-signed with your mother as of Monday. And same as your brother, $1,000 in the new will. Spend it wisely. Diane hadn't moved. The whole party had gone still as a photograph. Our pastor was studying the grass like he wished it would open up. She set her wine glass down very carefully, walked over, and took her envelope with both hands. Inside, Owen Pratt's surveillance log, 16 months of dates and addresses, Dale Farrow, the gym on Weaverville Highway, the motel, off Smoky Park Highway they used on Wednesday afternoons while I was running a company she was simultaneously helping her son rob. Beneath that, her signature on 11 fraudulent transfers, the forged power of attorney side by side with a genuine handwriting sample of mine, and beneath all of it, divorce papers, already filed, already processed. She went pale, not red, not tearful, pale. The particular color of a person whose body is having a conversation with reality that her brain hasn't caught up to yet. 35 years, I said quietly. And you couldn't wait 6 more days. You told a doctor I was 63 and that counted as a full life. Walter, please. You signed off on $600,000 being stolen from a company I built with my own hands. You helped put another man's name on my land while I was lying in a hospital bed unable to blink. I let that sit in the silence. My settlement offer is the old rental cabin up in Barnardsville, the one we bought back in 2001. You can live in it, or you can go to court and let a judge spend his morning reading your fraud timeline out loud. Your choice. Diane Kessler stood in her green dress. In the backyard she decorated with her own 2 hands, surrounded by every person in her social world, and had absolutely nothing left to say. Marcus hadn't moved from the edge of the patio. Very still. The blazer suddenly looked like a costume 2 sizes too confident. I didn't hand him an envelope. I just looked at him. Your biological father couldn't be bothered to stick around, I said. I married your mother when you were 4 years old and decided, right then, you were mine. I coached your teams. I taught you to drive. I walked you down the aisle. I made you general manager of a company I built out of the bed of a truck. I called you son. My voice never rose, not once, but something underneath it could have cut glass. And for 4 years, you stole from me. $610,000. 51 transactions. And when I woke up, instead of dying on schedule, you were annoyed. His jaw tightened. Walter, whatever you think you have, I don't think anything. I know. Renee filed a criminal complaint for embezzlement and deed forgery with the sheriff's office 2 days ago. The warrant was signed this morning. I looked toward the side gate. Come on in. 2 deputies in plain clothes walked through. The whole yard made a sound I can't fully describe, a collective intake of breath, somebody's glass hitting the flagstone. Bradley took a physical step backward, like he could distance himself from what was happening by inches. Marcus Delaney, one deputy said. Marcus looked at me one last time. Something in his face genuinely cracked, not quite remorse, more like the specific devastation of a man who had bet everything on his stepfather staying dead. You loved me like a real son, he said, almost a whisper. But it never felt like it was going to be enough. I did love you like a son, I told him. That part was real. All of it was real. They walked him out through the side gate while the whole backyard watched in silence. Diane had her hand over her mouth. Bradley was staring at his own shoes. Kayla was crying, real tears, though I honestly couldn't tell you what for. I picked my glass back up off the table, looked around at the neighbors, at the pastor, at the string lights. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, I said, and I meant it. Please, eat. The food's excellent. I picked the caterer myself. A few stunned faces. I finished my drink, set the glass down clean. I'm 63 years old. I've got a company still standing under my name, a scholarship fund I'm setting up at the community college, and not one single person left in my life who doesn't actually deserve to be there. I buttoned my jacket and walked through my own house, out the front door, into the cold mountain air. My truck was already packed, had been since Thursday. I pulled out of Reams Creek for the last time and turned onto the highway, heading north toward my sister's place in Boone, no particular hurry about it. My phone buzzed once on the seat. Diane. I didn't answer. 3 minutes later I pulled onto the shoulder, typed one line, and sent it. I heard every word. Then I put the phone in the glove box, rolled the windows down, and drove. They wanted me gone quietly. Instead, I gave every last one of them the truth, in front of everybody they loved. You wanted the inheritance, neighbors? You got exactly what you'd already earned. If this story meant something to you tonight, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me down in the comments where you're watching from. I'll see you on the next one. You don't need a hospital bed to find out who really loves you. Pay attention now, while you can still walk out to the porch and ask. Say the hard thing before silence forces someone else to say it for you. Real love doesn't wait for a will to prove itself. Build what you build for people who show up when you're just tired, not just when you're gone. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI for entertainment purposes, while hoping to leave you with a genuine positive life lesson.